Hello everyone, and thanks for the nice introduction. Well, for the next couple of talks, you're about to hear about 3D modeling stuff, which is a bit different from the other studies that you have been listening to. So we mostly focus on 3D modeling of human musculoskeletal system to study the motion. So as my supervisor, Dr. David Ackman, just mentioned, we need to have a great understanding of how our musculoskeletal system works to be able to investigate the pathological conditions such as fractures, chronic pains, dislocations, osteoarthritis, and also to be able to prevent injuries, treat the plan the treatments, and also improve the current processes designs. For this reason, we need to know how our muscles generate force to create the motion, and also we need to know how what sort of loads our joints are experiencing during the motions. But unfortunately, there is no non-invasive method that can help us directly measure the force from the body. That's why we need three-dimensional models of human musculoskeletal systems. My field of interest is biomechanics of shoulder complex, and to study shoulder, I'm so much interested to see how those individual muscles produce force during different motions, especially activities of daily living. The current musculoskeletal models are basically using a traditional method that we call it inverse dynamics, but this method has got some deficiencies and flaws, such as they cannot consider the different strategies that different people may take for doing the same task. They cannot see the effect of some factors such as pain, fatigue, or skill levels. They also cannot find the individual contribution of each muscle in generating the total joint moments, and they cannot also see the muscle contractions. So an alternative solution to this is using another method, which actually estimates the muscle forces based on the electromyographic records from the muscles. And this is not a new method, but since the computational process is quite tricky and complex, not many people are into doing it. So recently, a research group at the Griffith University has established a platform that facilitates that computational process, and they have studied the lower limb motion using that platform, but which is called CNMS. But that platform had never been used for studying the shoulder, and this is where I stepped in and I defined my PhD project on studying the shoulder biomechanics using these platforms. So I designed my experimental protocol based on the requirements of the model structure, and obviously since it's an EMG study, I definitely need to have a standard bunch of tasks to measure the maximum voluntary contractions to be able to normalize my EMG signals to them. And I had to include a group of special tasks to be able to use them for calibrating my model. These tasks included isometric tasks, dynamic passive tasks, and dynamic active tasks. I had to make sure that those tasks can cover almost all of the motions that our shoulder complex can create. And I also had to include a group of activities of daily living to validate the model. And in fact, the aim of my study is to estimate the muscle forces over these activities, which include the forward flexion, the scapular abduction, touching top of the head, and reaching, which can basically represent what we do over our daily lives. And so over the experimental session, I had to acquire three-dimensional location of the reflective markers that we attach to the bony landmarks of the subjects. And we need to measure the external forces applied to the body wherever applicable, and of course the EMG signals. And the core part of the study is using a three-dimensional model of the whole musculoskeletal system of the shoulder joint. that for this step, I used a recently established model, which is developed by another colleague of mine, Wen Wu, from our group. And I modified this model to adapt to my own study. And using all those data together, I calibrated my final model. And then when these blue tasks were fed to calibrate the model and model was calibrated, it was used for execution step, and those activities of daily living were fed to the model to estimate the final muscle forces and joint loads. So this is the whole outline of my methodology. And to perform my experiments, since I was interested in studying as many muscles as I could, I had to use both superficial and intramuscular electrodes. And as you may know, not many people, especially us engineers, are not authorized to do that, and not all authorized people are good at it. So we started collaborating with two experts from the University of Sydney, Dr. Karen Jin and Dr. Mark Halaki. And so I reestablished this lab and kind of modified it in my own way to add Vicon cameras to it. And as you can see in the middle of the room, there is a sensor to measure the external forces. And at the right part, you can see the EMG data acquisition system. And in the bottom, you can see a picture of a typical subject. Whoever stepped in our lab ended up looking like this and having a lot of wires and reflective markers attached to them. And yeah, here in this slide, I can just show you the final step of my computational process, that for estimating the muscle forces for the activities of daily living, we take the neural commands, and a lot of crazy computations are supposed to happen on them to get the muscle activations and then muscle contractions, which are known as muscle forces for us. And as I mentioned before, CNMS platform is developed by a research group under Professor David Lloyd at the Griffith University. I modified this platform in my own way to get my muscle forces. So in this slide, I just want to show you some samples of simulated motions in our three-dimensional musculoskeletal system. This is, for example, the frontal view and the posterior view to the scapular abduction. For our model, it is quite important to accurately track the motion of the clavicle, humerus, and the scapula freely. The previous models were not providing a good kinematics of this system, but the current model is far way better at this. And another one, this is for a reaching task. You can see the sagittal view of that. Yes. And this is the posterior view. All right. And after having all of the computations finished, we could estimate the individual muscle forces and joint loads. Here I have just an example of the results. As you can see in this figure, for the scapular abduction, middle deltoid, as we expect, is the main abductor muscle. And the model was successfully estimating the muscle forces for that, certain muscle. And as you can see, it can follow the trend of the EMG signal. To conclude, I should say this is the first patient-specific EMG-informed neuromusculoskeletal model of human shoulder that we hopefully can use it for, get a better understanding of how a normal and healthy system works, and also to be able to apply some special pathological conditions such as rotator cuffs. For example, we can take some of the rotator cuff muscles off the model and study how it would affect the function of other muscles and the joint loads. And hopefully we can use this platform for modifying the future arthroplasty of the shoulder. Thank you very much.